Hello, and welcome to another Rouge unit of the Reek. And today we're taking a look at the Churchill Mark IV, available to the 15th Scottish Infantry Division. British tank doctrine during the Second World War was a rather peculiar one. They split up tanks into two categories. You had cruiser tanks. These meant to be used like cavalry to exploit enemy weak points and make massive breakthrough attacks and flank around, maneuver warfare, all of that jolly good stuff. And then you had infantry support tanks such as Valentine and Matildas, which are slow tanks that are heavily armoured, they are meant to stay behind the infantry, work directly with the infantry, and just deal with any enemy hardpoints that they come up against. The Churchill was an infantry tank, meant to replace the older Valentine and Matilda models. The early Churchill models were really quite peculiar, as the turret only sported a 2-pounder gun, but it had a howitzer in the hull, kind of like a Char B1 or an M3 Lee, for example. These early models proved to be rather rubbish, as the hull-mounted howitzer was rather inaccurate and hard to aim, and so they opted for later models such as the Mark III and the Mark IV, which would have a more respectable 6-pounder gun in the turret. The Mark IV, which would enter into production in 1943 and would see service in Italy, North Africa, as well as Western Europe, would be one of the most prevalent Churchill models to be produced. Most of them, like I said, were armed with 6-pounder guns, but sometimes they were retrofitted with 75mm British or American guns. In-game, the Churchill Mark IV is a 60-point heavy tank available exclusively to the Scottish Infantry Division, and it has two weapons. So you have the 6-pounder gun with 6 APCR shells and 82 regular armor penetration shells. Both ammunition types are pretty good. APCR more for dealing with specialized heavy tanks, but you don't have a lot of ammunition and it doesn't do a lot of damage on penetration. But at least it has a good chance penetrating. And regular AP cells at 115 pen is honestly pretty decent. Also, it has 12 rounds a minute, which you can't really complain about. That's rather fast for a mid-caliber AT gun. And then you have two machine guns. In terms of armor layout, you got 90mm on the front, strong top armor, 70mm on the side, and 65 on the back. And if we pop down to its miscellaneous stats, it goes a whopping 20km off-road, 30km off-road, very bad stealth, and very low optics. In battle, the Churchill Mark IV is a pretty cool tank, and that's just due to the fact of the gun. It has the 6-pounder, and I have to say in SD2 the 6-pounder is borderline broken, not completely, but it's almost there. And that's just due to the fact it shoots so bloody fast. Same thing with small caliber AT guns. Just being able to shoot at even a heavily armored tank with a bunch of non-penetrating hits, you can usually get good non-penetrating critical hits, like knocking out the tracks or injuring the gunner or driver, for example, which more or less keep the tank out of action, and sometimes you can even kill them if you just get enough and maybe drop some artillery on the disabled tank. And also you have the APCR shells, which actually allows you to kill heavier tanks. Less likely you're going to, as you don't have a lot of those shells and you do less damage on penetration, but sometimes you can get a critical hit kill, like a lucky penetration shot, or sometimes you can knock out the engine, destroy the gun, etc., which pretty much keeps the tank out of commission for a little bit. And for 60 points, that's not too bad, being able to knock out a 110-point Tiger tank, for example. So it's a great gun, it's a fantastic gun. It makes short work of medium tanks, light tanks, really anything that you throw up against it. The problem, however, is it's on a rather mediocre tank. The Churchill Mark II tank chassis is nothing really to write home about. For a heavy tank, I mean, yes, it's a medium tank technically in the game files, but goddamn, it's a heavy tank at heart. It only has 90mm of frontal armor, which is pretty pathetic, as medium tanks with better frontal armor values. And also you have no high explosive shells, so it's not a great infantry support tank in that regard. It's really just here to blow up other tanks. And also you're really slow. Only 20km off-road and 30km on the road means I find it takes 2 minutes roughly for us to come out of deployment to get to the front line in most occasions. And because of how large ST2 maps can get, that can be a real big issue if you manage to push pretty heavy into the enemy deployment zone. And also if you want to redeploy it on another flank. That's not going to happen. Where you put the Churchill, what area, what flank you put it in, it's where it's probably going to stay for most of the match, as it just cannot maneuver around. It's a very defensive tool. But as a defensive tool to put on a hilltop and to just completely pound German tanks or Russian tanks that are being used by Germans that are coming at you, you can't really go wrong for 60 points. And you get quite a healthy amount of these Churchill Mark IVs. They're a real good tank for the 14th. Just don't be expecting to do, cavalry charges or big tank maneuvers that you would of like T-34s, Panzer IVs, more regular medium tanks. As this thing, he's a little bit slow, a little bit asthmatic, I find. And well, I'm going to leave it off at that. This has been another Rank Rouge unit of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And as usual, please just take it easy.